Heavy Rain is an interactive drama experience by Quantic Dream, developers of Fahrenheit. I know that's a strange way of putting it, but that's really what it is. It's part adventure game, part movie. I was very curious to see how this could be implemented into a video game without making the entire experience essentially a CGI film. The story concerns 4 primary and playable characters across a period of approximately 3 days. Each of them becomes involved with the Origami Killer, a serial murderer who kidnaps and drowns children. There's Ethan Mars, a father struggling to come to terms with the loss of his son Jason. Scott Shelby, a retired cop turned private detective working on the Origami Killer case. Norman Jayden, an FBI profiler sent to aid the police investigation into the Origami Killer, and he possesses an interesting alternate reality device. And Madison Page, a journalist suffering from insomnia. Have you ever seen the movie Crash? Well, it's pretty much like that. Everyone eventually collides with one another at some point in the story, and you swap around their perspectives. These characters have various parts to play in the investigation and eventually identification of the Origami Killer. I seriously don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that Ethan probably has the most screen time, passing a series of rather creative tests from the killer, which I really enjoyed. It's a reasonable story overall, filled with some very emotional moments, and others close to what you find in a psychological thriller. I guess the largest disappointment is that everything occurs in a linear fashion. You have little control over the story until close towards the end. There are no alternate level routes, and the killer will always be the same. Even though there are something like 30 different endings, you might not be too enthusiastic about having to play the exact same sequences again just to see 3 minutes of extra content. Also, I feel that there are many unexplained things which left gaping plot holes everywhere. For instance, Ethan's blackouts are not even addressed. Being the premise of the game, I would say the story needs improvement. It's the hypothetical situations which I got a kick out of. The killer's motive just seemed a little too implausible.
Take the highway and drive against the traffic for 5 miles. If you haven't reached your destination in 5 minutes, you will have failed.
Can't stop my hands shaking. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it! If I succeed, I'll get more letters for the hangman. It's my only lead. No turning back now. I can do it. I'd do anything to save my son.
Now the gameplay. I bet you're wondering, what gameplay? You're right. Well, I can safely say that absolutely anyone will be able to play Heavy Rain. It's designed around a series of prompts which display on screen, which I guess is quite similar to what the games do today, reminding us to press R to reload every 3 seconds because it isn't obvious enough. All you have to do is tap the buttons which appear on screen to perform an action. Some require you to hold down the button, some require you to press multiple buttons. It's not difficult, although there are oddly some different settings for it.
Take it easy, man.
There are often scenes during the game which are large QuickTime events. During these periods you have to press the prompts quickly to avoid an incoming punch, for example. If you don't, there's nothing to worry about. You cannot actually game over in Heavy Rain. It's just, during some of these events, you might achieve a different outcome. Like when a storekeeper is being held up, it's possible to talk some sense into the assailant, or just let the owner die.
You haven't done anything serious yet. If you put the gun away, we'll forget about what just happened, and that will be the end of it. Just walk away.
Nothing serious. Shit, man! What the fuck do you think I'm doing here?
So what do I think of this? It's accessible in a word. Anyone can do it, which is good, but I don't really see anyone enjoying it. When I was 3 years old and pressing buttons to hear Groves say something, then I was entertained. It's due to there being many pointless events where I was just getting bored. Changing nappies, brushing teeth, not very interesting. Jayden's Ari gizmo is pretty cool though. There were some parts where I was a little empathetic with the character because the controller was vibrating so hard I just couldn't go through with one part. I mean, really, who wants to chop off their finger with a saw? Graphics are alright. It's designed like the Silent Hill games where you change your angle every time you enter a new area. This results in some relatively polished environments such as the golf range. I was expecting a little more from the water department since it's constantly raining. The water doesn't really trickle down object edges and appear more detailed. There's not even any lightning till near the end. Then there are the characters' faces which look much better in the initial trailers. In some scenes they just look awkward. Two characters were yelling at one another and it took me a moment to understand what was going on.
Blake, I've had just about enough of your shit. You've been chasing this guy for what, 2 years? And what are you caught, huh? Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
What, you think you can do a better fucking job than me with your psychology degree and your great glasses? Well, let me tell you something, pal. That don't mean zip when it comes to getting out there. You're just a fucking bureaucrat.
So, was the voice acting any good? Well, at times, yes. They managed to build some emotion, particularly when using the character's thoughts or activating specific sequences. I'm more horrified by the voice acting which occurs at the beginning. You may have seen the Jason shouting scene.
Jason! 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 Jason!
As another kidnapping by the Origami killer. If this information is confirmed,
hello there, sweetheart. What can I do for you?
3 to 5 days
I'd like a room.
For you? Anything.
For the investigators trying to find the child.
Feeling the register.
I'm Michael Nettie for ICN.
The music is really great. Each character has a specific theme, so when you hear the opening tune you'll know you're playing Scott. The orchestral focus is clearly on making the game seem as depressing as possible. I wouldn't call this very uplifting. The game is definitely focused on misery. I mean, the association with rain is evidence enough, and that's good. I think the soundtrack tied in well and made you feel more empathy for the characters. Very moving pieces. Almost evaporates the horrible facial expressions.
Miss him so much. Do anything to hold him once again in my arms.
So, should you get Heavy Rain? It really depends upon how patient you are as a player. If you want an action-packed game, stay the hell away from Heavy Rain. It's more like an adventure game without the item parts, staying clearly focused on telling an emotional story. I enjoyed it because it was something unique, and it was so much better than that movie it's similar to Crash, which had absolutely no plot. So I have to be honest, Heavy Rain is probably best categorized as an interactive movie, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have fun. I'd still stick with an adventure game called Grim Fandango over this, since it does everything so much better. For $20 it's not bad, you'll get about 10 hours out of it.
Would you like a drink? I was just about to have one.
Sure, why not?
Okay, well this is obviously a trap.
You're not drinking?
It's so obviously a trap that it couldn't be a trap.
Having some trouble. Didn't your mother ever warn you about accepting gifts from strangers?
Ah, you've gotta be kidding.